Hey everybody, Jeremy here, and today I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, also known as Coppa. So by now I know that you've probably seen a ton of videos on YouTube about Coppa and a lot of creators who are freaking out, scared, confused about how it's going to affect life on YouTube for them and for a lot of other people too. And in particular, the really harsh penalties involved if you fail to comply with COPA, including a huge fine of about $42,530 per violation if you do not properly mark your content as being made for children, if it is in fact made for children. And so it's caused a lot of people to start panicking and running for the hills, particularly because the language involved in the COPA Act is very confusing. It's very vague. So it's led people for example, people who do reviews on action figures and toys and collectibles to wonder if their channels are going to be affected by COPA because although their stuff isn't directed towards children, it's something that kids may be interested in seeing. And that's where that's where all the fear comes from, is that people who don't think that they are in violation because they're not making anything that's directed towards kids. But kids might like it, like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, adults and kids can like that. And they think that one day they're just going to wake up and find out that they've been fined to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars by the FTC, and their lives are completely ruined. It's understandable to, feel that way and to fear when something this big could possibly come down on you. But it's also important, I think, to not just straight up panic, because you have to take a moment and just do some reading and just kind of see like where things are going to go before you start running for the hills and everything like that. So reason why I'm saying that right now is because the FTC released a blog post recently that is going to help you to determine whether or not your channel is one of those that can fall under the COPA rule or not. And this is a really interesting blog post, and it's written in very easy to understand language that you should definitely take a look at. Now, I'm going to read some of it here. And I'll just leave a link in the description as well so that you can check it out for yourself. But I think that it'll be really helpful in helping people to determine whether or not they are going to fall under these rules or not. So one of the questions, at least one of the questions I had, was if this whole COPA violation thing was YouTube's fault because YouTube was collecting the data on kids under the age of 13, then why in the world are creators being held responsible for collecting any kind of data at all? Why are we being punished? Why would we be punished if our content was directed towards kids? Why is it our responsibility to mark anything? Why isn't it YouTube's responsibility? And it should be YouTube's responsibility completely. But according to the FTC, it says that if a channel owner uploads content to a platform like YouTube, the channel might meet the definition of a website or online service covered by COPA, depending on the nature of the content and the information collected. Here's a really important part here. If the content is directed to children and the channel owner or someone on its behalf, for example, an ad network, collects personal information from users of that content, for example, through a persistent identifier that tracks a user to serve interest-based ads, the channel is covered by COPA. Once COPA applies, the operator must provide notice, obtain verifiable parental consent, and meet COPA's other requirements. So that language is why we're being held responsible for that, because under these rules, we have to do it because YouTube is going to be collecting that data for their ads. So we have to tell them whether or not it's directed towards kids, and if we lie about it, we'll be held responsible for that. So how do you even know if your channel is going to be covered? Because it has a lot of really vague language. What if your stuff is something that kids can be interested in, but you're not directed towards kids? Well, they sort of address that as well. So they say under Coppa, there is no one size fits all answer about what makes a site or your YouTube channel, I'm adding that part in right there, directed to children. But we can offer you some guidance. Just to be clear, your content isn't considered directed to children just because some children may see it. However, if your intended audience is kids under 13, you're covered by Coppa and have to honor the rules requirements. I thought that was really important there. So the rule sets out additional factors the FTC will consider in determining whether your content is child directed. Those points are visual subject matter, visual content, the use of animated characters or child-oriented activities and incentives, the kind of music or other audio content, the age of models, if you have models in your video, the presence of child celebrities or celebrities who appeal to children, language and other characteristics of the site, whether advertising that promotes or appears on the site is directed to children, and competent and reliable empirical evidence about the age of the audience. It goes on to say that the determination of whether content is child-directed will be clearer in some contexts than in others, but we can share some general rules of thumb. First, unless you're affirmatively targeting kids, there are many subject matter categories where you don't have to worry about Coppa. For example, if your videos are traditionally adult activities like employment, finances, politics, or home ownership, home improvement, or travel, you're probably not covered unless your content is geared towards kids. The same would be true for videos aimed at high school or college students. On the other hand, if your content includes traditional children's pastimes or activities, it may be child-directed. For example, the FTC recently determined that an online dress-up game was child-directed. Second, just because your video has bright colors or animated characters doesn't mean you're automatically covered by Coppa. While many animated shows are directed to kids, the FTC recognizes there can be animated programming that appeals to everyone. Then they also go on to refer to a complaint in this YouTube case that gives some more examples of how the FTC determines if a channel is going to be considered directed towards children. It says, for example, many content creators explicitly stated in the About section of their YouTube channel that their intended audience was children under 13. And other channels made similar statements in communications with YouTube. In addition, many of the channels feature popular animated children's programs or show kids playing with toys or participating in other child-oriented activities. Some of the channel owners also enabled settings that made their content appear when users search for the names of popular toys or animated characters. So if you were to consider all of those things and you're still sort of wondering, well, I still don't know if my channel is going to be covered by Coppa or not, the FTC then says that it might help to consider how others view your content and content similar to yours. For example, has your channel been reviewed on sites that evaluate content for kids? And has a channel like yours been mentioned in blogs for parents of young children or in media articles about child-directed content? Have you surveyed your users, or is there any empirical evidence about the age of your audience? So I think in terms, and of course I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give any legal advice, but I think in terms of trying to figure out, like if you review, toys or action figures, adult collectibles, wondering if you're gonna get hit by the FTC because kids may be interested in like Spider-Man and stuff. Personally, I think that you're gonna be okay because the FTC isn't looking at this as like some sort of, algorithm a bot's going to sweep through and the bot doesn't understand context and is really just imperfect, and all of a sudden you're going to have thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people getting really huge fines because a robot doesn't understand context. Personally, I really don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that if you have a channel like that, it's clear that you are not showing like play school toys, and you don't have these colorful backdrops in your voice. It's like, hey, check it out. Ooh, it's so fun. I think those are the channels that the FTC are going to be looking at. But if you're reviewing some SH figure art stuff, I think you'll be fine personally. Now, the other really big thing is the fine. People have been saying $42,000. The exact number is $42,530 per violation. And just one violation will be enough to absolutely ruin someone for life. It'll just be life ending financially for a lot of people. The important thing to remember about that is in the language, it says you can be fined up to that amount. And when you see up to, it doesn't mean that you're going to get hit with that much of a fine. Now, of course, you don't want to get hit with any fine, but if you were worried about such a thing, here's some more information for you. So it says that the rule allows for civil penalties of up to $42,530 per violation, but the FTC considers a number of factors determining the appropriate amount, including a company's financial condition and the impact the penalty could have on its ability to stay in business. While YouTube and Google paid $170 million in another Coppa case settled this year, the operator paid a total civil penalty of $35,000. And that particular case in general was about two commercial websites that failed to protect consumers' data, ClickSense and iDressUp.com. Those are the two websites in particular that they're referring to. So even though, it's not very pleasant to think about possibly being in violation and being fined, it doesn't mean that it's going to be 42,000 plus constantly compounded on top of each other times the 2,000-3,000 videos you have, essentially putting you in financial ruin for the rest of your life and your kids' lives and their kids' lives and their kids' lives. Because realistically, average people on YouTube, they'll never be able to afford anything like that. They wouldn't even be able to afford one single violation. But those are some things that they're going to consider, if it just happens to come to that. But as usual, everything is not set in stone. And there's a lot of comments people are leaving to the FTC in an official capacity, and they're also doing some change.org stuff to urge the FTC to reconsider, because, things have changed since the law was put into place back in like 1998. And since it was amended like in 2013, 2014, something like that. And so the FTC in that regard says that they are currently evaluating the rule in light of rapid changes in technology. And they do encourage you to leave a comment on the effectiveness of the rule. And that deadline is December 9th, 2019. So at the recording time of this video, you still got yourself a few more weeks to leave a comment. And I do really encourage that you do. I also encourage you to also leave a comment to like your senators and to your Congress people, and let them know as well. Put that on their radar because they can also have some sort of influence over this kind of thing. So, anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about Coppa, because this is a recent blog post by the FTC, and I think that it helps to alleviate some concerns about whether or not you're going to comply with Coppa if you have particular kinds of channels. And I keep mentioning toys and stuff because that's kind of like the realm that I sort of live in, not all the time, but some of the times I do, because I have reviewed lots of toys in the past, and like Funko Pops and different types of collectibles and stuff like that. And initially I was wondering like, whoa, what does this mean for me? And I always personally felt like, well, this is just too far reaching. And this Coppa law, the way that it was being shown and exemplified online, could possibly mean that anything could be in violation. Someone who makes a video about, this is how you make a birthday cake for a 2-year-old. Kids like cake. Are they in violation of that? What if you're playing, music and you're like, well, here's a heavy metal rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Are you in violation of Coppa? So it was just one of those things where any and everybody could get got. And it was causing a lot of fear. And people have been releasing lots of videos, terrified, and some of it has been legit, and some of it has been like, oh my God, Coppa, screenshot, thumbnail, and stuff like that. But anyway, go check out the FTC's website to check out more information about that. And they also do give you some access to some resources that if you still don't know if you're going to fall within compliance or not, there are some organizations that they do have in place that can help you with that kind of thing. So just go ahead and check that out and give it a read. So yeah, that's it for me. What is it going to mean for me and my channel? I'm just going to keep doing what I do because yeah, I think I'm fine. And you're most likely fine too. So until next time, I'm Jeremy. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you later.